Let's jump right in. It's a fun way to start a session, anyways. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you all had a great lunch. Sorry we couldn't be there in person, but I'm sure that we are going to learn and we're going to experience things in a very different way. And we will also continue to experience this virtual conference and take a lot of learnings out of it. The morning has been fantastic. I've had a lot of learnings already from some of the various sessions. Today we're going to be talking about employee empathy, especially in business transformations. I'm Gautham Pallapa. I'm a global CTO for VMware. I focus on business transformations and I help companies and organizations on their transformation journey. Today, we are going to talk about everything that is current and what we're going through. 2020 has been extremely hard, especially for people who are optimistic. And full disclosure, I'm one of those people who try to find the optimism in the face of adversity and try to look for that silver lining in it. But it's been really hard, especially in 2020. We have the pandemic that's going on for months. We've had hurricanes, we've had storms, we've had riots, we've had protests, we've had fires. I'm broadcasting all this from California, so I'm living the fire and the smokes and all the dystopian looks that we've all had. I've woken up to orange skies, and I've had my 6-year-old son actually ask me if the sky was on fire. So it's been a really challenging year for us. What it's already also shown is that in spite of our technical advancement, in spite of our socioeconomic advancement, and in spite of our medical advancement, nature and all these various things that have happened have demonstrated to us how frail and fragile humanity truly is. And how fundamental our needs are. The way we look at things and try to feel secure is very, very impacted because of this pandemic. And all of this goes to the hierarchy of needs that an American psychologist called Alexander Abraham Maslow talked about. And at the basis of it, you have physiological needs. So what this pandemic has done and all these various situations have impacted us is that it's hit us at the very concept of food and water as a supply chain. Breathing was scary at one point of time, and that really shook us at the foundation of the pyramid. And then when we had shelter in place, we had safety concerns, we had issues with employment, with resources, with health, with security in personal matters, interactions with people. We started fearing all of that. And when we had the social distancing and the lockdowns and all those various things, the love and belonging and the interactions with people, with family members, with loved ones also started getting impacted. So the three levels of the base of our pyramid of needs was shook by this pandemic and by all the other events that have come out of that. So as a result of it, for a lot of people, the self-esteem, the confidence, our achievement and respect that we crave has been shook. And in addition to that, we are not able to even move forward. And this is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of us feel extremely stressed right now, extremely stressful. Now, this gets more complicated and gets more challenging for an organization that is undergoing a business transformation or a digital transformation, or that was on the initial journey of this transformation. So let's take a couple of months back. Let's assume a case where a company had started on the business transformation route a couple of months before COVID happened or the shelter in place occurred. And then let's try to walk through and see how the motion and how things would have occurred. So, as we all know, anyone who's gone through a business transformation or anyone who has sat through what a business transformation is or how the company wants to transform, they know that the picture of a business transformation is glorious, right? It's making it's trying to do things in order to make your organization or your company harder, faster, better, stronger, most awesome, best in class, all the buzzwords that you can use. There are kittens and unicorns and champagne will flow everywhere, and it's glorious. And that's aspirational and it's motivational and it's meant to be that way. And then, based upon that vision, we start trying to implement it. And we take it in a traditional sense. And this is average organization. Your mileage will definitely vary. There are many organizations that evaluate things and plan things upfront, but an average organization usually focuses on technology first because that is the most discrete thing and that is the most easiest thing to implement, to achieve, to get that low hanging fruit, so to speak, and then get the realization or the feeling that we are transforming because we're put in newer technology or we're migrated off a technology that was perceived as painful. But pretty soon we start realizing that the processes are impacting us, that it's not as smooth as we think it is. The integration is not going that well. And so we start investing on processes, we start investing in lean and agile methodologies and trying to improve it, and then we upskill people in order to make them adopt to these technologies, these new ways of working, and then hopefully we reach a point where we say, okay, we're going to be successful in this business transformation. And this is a pretty standard linear approach that an average organization would go through. And while we're working on processes, one of the things we say is this organization would say is we're going to adopt agile in some way, form, or shape. Agile becomes a word, a verb, a noun, an adverb, and an adjective for a lot of people. And then they think that by bringing in this agile concept, automatically things will start moving faster. And they become nimbler, we go faster to market, and all the good stuff that agility promises. And then they want to enhance it and accelerate it with DevOps and try to push everything faster. Dev become ops, or we have a separate DevOps team. There are various flavors of this, and we're not going to talk about that today. But the goal is we're going to accelerate agile with DevOps, and then we're going to start realizing the value. In a survey conducted by Dora, but based upon the results, they said that 79% of the companies have adopted some form of agility in order to increase their speed to market and in order to generate the value quicker. However, what they found is that only 49% of those people surveyed actually have had their needle moved or they've improved upon things while they've adopted Agile and DevOps during this transformation. And that's less than 50% of the companies. And that's not a really good number if you really think about it. So while in a company you have this glorious manifestation of what a business transformation truly should look like, and you have this aspirational poster that you can hang, and you probably have knickknacks on your table, the reality is slightly different. And if you think about it, when you truly observe your transformation or someone who's actually claimed to have transformed, you look at it and it meets all the requirements of what was aspired. For example, this has four legs, it has a mane, it has a tail, it can be ridden. It probably has a horn, kind of, and you could potentially look like a badass if you ride this. But it just doesn't feel the same. And it doesn't really make you feel transformed. So let's dig into why that is. And there are a number of reasons why this could happen, but I'm going to focus on the most fundamental thing that is really current today in a post COVID-19 world. And that is there is a difference between change, which means in improving the past. It is incremental, it is slow, and it is still with the assumption that you're operating within your comfort zone and you're slowly moving towards your target state. But what we truly need in this post COVID-19 world is transformation. You want to create a new and better future. You want to abandon or take a really good look at the models and at the mechanisms that you currently have within your organization, and you want to find a way to radically change them or transform them into something very different. And this is imperative in a post COVID-19 world, especially because customers, they are moving everything to digital. They've already transformed into a new way of life. They've accepted it. They want everything quick. They want everything contactless. They want things delivered as quickly as possible. And the patience level of the customer or the consumer has dropped drastically. And so, in a business transformation during a post COVID-19 world, it is slightly different. We need to accelerate the pace, we need to move forward, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge a couple of other things that are different in this kind of an environment. The first thing is the business driver, transformation drivers are going to be the same. We need to acknowledge that we need to have lean experimentation. So we want to have that build, measure, learn feedback loops, have that mechanism in order to start implementing things and trying to get feedback from it quickly. We want to truly adopt agile software development practices such as pair programming, TDD, cloud native approaches. There are so many of those, but we want to truly adopt software development. And then we want to accelerate it with DevOps. That is, we want to bring in that operational efficiency. We want to bring in continuous integration, continuous delivery, sometimes continuous deployment. We want to have that increased automation footprint so that we can reduce the amount of toil, that manual toil that is going on within the organization. And at the same time, what we want to do is we want to reduce the friction from concept to consumption, or from an idea being formed into actually monetizing it and gaining revenue out of that particular idea. And that is one of the critical things that we need to focus on as a driver. Now, in my interactions with a number of organizations, helping them on the business transformations and also having led many of them myself, what we have found is that there are four primary areas in this post COVID-19 world, especially in a remote work environment, that we need to drive on. The first one is execution. The second one is collaboration. We want to make sure that people are collaborating in this remote environment. The third one is communication. And the fourth one is enablement. But all these four areas are ways of how we can improve upon things or improve upon the existing state of how people are working together in a remote environment. The core of it and the crux of what we want to focus on in order to elevate and in order to help people is to focus on empathy. So let's dive into empathy a little bit and figure out how and why this is so important in our world today. So empathy, there are a number of definitions of empathy. I'm going to just define one and give my guiding principle to set the stage for the rest of this session. For me, empathy is love and understanding for your fellow humans. It's positive in nature, and what you are going to do if you're empathetic is you're reaching out to people. You're going to make sure that they're all working collectively together, they're being happy and they're being positive, and there's goodness going all around. The best indication that you're empathetic is when you work with people and you see their happiness and then you feel warm and fuzzy and nice inside. That usually is an indication of you being empathetic. And there are a lot of people who are truly empathetic, and that has become amplified and has been demonstrated in these remote environments. And it's very encouraging to see humanity raise up to a different level because of this global pandemic. So my guiding principle is when you can look at a human being and you can put yourself in their shoes, you understand their pain, the stress they're going through, and this is the most important part, you value their happiness above your own, that's when I feel that I am truly being empathetic. And that is my guiding principle. So let's zoom in on on a COVID-19 scenario, walk through the situations that occurred and why empathy is so important for us. So in pre-COVID-19, that seems a very long time ago, but we were in what I now call as a comfort zone. We were not exactly stressed. We knew how things were there, how things were going. We had a grasp on things. We felt we were stressed, but when you look at it now, you know that that was not truly stress. And then we started having the pandemic spread and the 24-hour news channels covering it. And then we had people that we know actually starting getting afflicted by it. We had March, it started spreading really bad, and so we became slightly stressed. We also had challenges with our supply chain logistics, with our delivery mechanisms. We were scared of breathing air, and so the stress started building up, and that's when we started feeling a little bit of discomfort. After that, we had the shelter in place. And when we had the shelter in place, we went into what I call as the panic zone. We became completely stressed. This was real. We were locked in our own places. We did not have the luxury of actually going to a different physical location to perform activities. Everything collapsed into a single location for us. And that in itself became this interesting experiment, which loosely is termed as work from home, but I would rather say this is existence from home because you have so many other people around you, your partners, your children, your pets, your loved ones, all operating and trying to exist within the same physical location and trying to find a modicum of normalcy in this world. And that causes a lot of stress. There are so many of us who are so worried, and I'm sure it's happened to all of us, where you had the child or the dog just burst into an important meeting that you have, and you feel really bad or feel really embarrassed and feel guilty about it. Those situations are normal right now, and if you still feel bad about it, what I would suggest is embrace it. It's okay to be human. It's okay when these kinds of situations occur, but because what it does is it signals and it demonstrates that you are human too. You're not just a person who is talking, who is working all the time. You have another side which is personal, where you can demonstrate and show the value and all the good things that you are bringing. But having working in these kinds of environments and establishing some kind of normalcy here does introduce a lot of stress upon people. Zoom fatigue is real. There are so many meetings that are going on. And so what this stress does is it increases cortisol within our body. And cortisol, it creates paranoia, it creates fear, it erodes trust and empathy, and it makes team environments really unhappy. The other thing that stress introduces is it introduces adrenaline into our body, which is our fight or flight mechanism. And so you start becoming punchy or you start becoming wary of everything. And you're really on the edge. You're always concerned about repercussions or things that could happen. And it's not really happy. Luckily for us, nature has provided some happy chemicals that will actually help counter this. And the first one is dopamine. And dopamine is a chemical that gives you that incentive for progress. So the surge of pleasure when you achieve a goal or get a particular award or hit one of those leaderboard places, that's dopamine, and it helps you drive towards achieving those various items. The next one is oxytocin, and oxytocin is a love chemical. This creates intimacy, it creates trust, it builds healthy relationships. Oxytocin is predominantly generated through physical interaction, so a hug or a high five or a handshake, patting someone on the back. Those kinds of things generate oxytocin. But What has also been found is that oxytocin can be generated through remote mechanisms by developing that intimacy or trust and the relationships, really projecting your happiness and your empathy towards someone on a remote mechanism has also demonstrated that oxytocin increases. Then you have serotonin. Serotonin is your leadership chemical, and this is your feeling of pride, and importance. So the pride that you feel, or the warmth that you feel when you read accolade that you've gotten, or an email from your VP or executive or CEO commending you on the hard work that you've done. That's serotonin, and that really helps you feel nice and happy, and it also helps generate and drive a lot of the dopamine that you've looked for because you accomplish something. You get that pleasure as well. The last one is endorphins, and endorphins is a runner's high, and this helps alleviate stress and anxiety. This is that second wind that runners get. It helps you push through, try to achieve things because you're craving so hard for that dopamine that endorphins are going to make it easier. So if there's one thing that I'd like you all to take from this particular session is to make sure that you have a healthy dose of these happy chemicals. Try to find ways in which you can achieve your dopamine, your oxytocin, your serotonin, and then your endorphins, because that will help reduce your cortisol and your adrenaline level within your body. It helps reduce your stress, and it also makes you more empathetic. And this is why empathy is so important right now. Empathy also helps break the silos between business and IT because you're putting yourself in their shoes and feeling the pain. It creates safe environments because the cortisol level reduces, the stress reduces, and you can actually be open and transparent and collaborative. It brings that transparency and trust, and then it helps with more innovation because now you're not in fight or flight mode. You're truly looking at how you can improve and make things better. And finally, because of all these things, because you become a little more relaxed, you have that learning culture. So let's dig into the four areas. The first one is execution. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about remote execution. And as we are going through this session, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the app. I will try to address them right now here if possible, or I will definitely be addressing them throughout the rest of the day. I will get to the questions. We can have a conversation, and if you want to have further interactions, feel free to hit me up, and we can talk about it because this is really passionate for me. So, execution. The first one is what I call as flow modernization, and this truly means that you want to reduce the amount of friction from in your path to production. So from concept to consumption, right? So you want to make it as easy as possible, reduce the manual toil, and make it easy for people to just move, be it software or be it any kind of an artifact from their creation all the way up to actually being consumed. So for this, value stream mapping is really important, and this is even though value stream mapping might have occurred in the recent past, I would encourage all of you to champion this again, because in a remote environment, this becomes that there are certain facets that might need to be investigated. The goal here is to eliminate waste. So there are six different kinds of waste that you can look at in a software organization, and you want to look at eliminating that waste, reducing it as much as possible. The next one is stand-ups and spin-downs. Everyone's familiar with the stand-up. It's basically a touch base at the beginning of the day to figure out what you're going to work on today and what value you can expect out at the end of the day. A spin down is something that we, especially at VMware, we practice, especially in VMware Pivotal Labs. And this spin down is a checkpoint or an update at the end of the day where we talk about all the wins that we got out of that day, all the accomplishments that we had. We talk about kudos. And someone did something really fun, and so you have the team shout out those kudos, and then you praise people for the things that they accomplished. What this does is it accomplishes the fact that you know you're signaling to the entire team that you actually accomplished something. So you're getting that dopamine hit. When someone else calls out a kudos, you get that serotonin, and so they start feeling happy. And because of those two things, and because this is an exchange within a team, you have that oxytocin, that intimacy, and that trust that is building up. Um, in a spin down, I do not have people actually talk about the helps that they need for the next day, because that would actually reduce the amount of positive effect that you have. I encourage people to talk about it either asynchronously or synchronously throughout the day through any of the various collaboration mechanisms that we have, and not bring it up at the end of the day. And if something does happen at the end of the day, I ask them to reflect and introspect on whether this is something we can bring it up the next morning rather than at the end of the day, because what a spin down also signals is that psychological end of a workday, which is something that we really need. We're constantly on any of these video collaboration mechanisms are working. We're actually working way more number of hours, especially because we are working across time zones. And so having that spin down will psychologically signal to our brain that it's okay now to relax and focus on the reason why we're working so hard, which is our personal life and the happiness that we're trying to achieve. And so spin downs are really important, and I drive and make sure that we have spin downs every day. Except on Fridays, the spin down then becomes a retro, whenever the end of your iteration is. Next is meetings, and we have a ton of these meetings. And sometimes it's hard to say no to meetings, but one of the things that we want to do is also make sure that we are respecting people's times, and we are having boundaries. So having shorter meetings or smarter meetings, 25 minutes instead of 30, 50 minutes instead of 60 minutes. Those are standard ways that you can do. The other thing is make sure that you have breaks in between. Even during a 50-minute meeting, if needed, try to give the team a little bit of break, like a 2-minute stretch break. Have icebreakers in there. Try to help them stretch. It helps build that intimacy. It also helps them stretch and be physically fit, and it increases that well-being. And when the team realizes that you're invested in their happiness and their well-being, that oxytocin starts getting generated, and that trust increases. The other thing that I encourage people to do is question whether you even need the meeting. There are a number of things that you can do, like Roman votes, if you have to take a decision wherever possible, or you can have. We use Slack a lot, so I'm going to use that as an example. But what we do is we can post our status out there. So we have our boards tied to Slack, and whenever we change or move a ticket, it automatically posts into my Slack channel saying that this particular card was completed by this person. And so that is a running commentary, or that is a updated status asynchronously through to the entire team. And it doesn't have to be in the form of a status meeting, a separate status meeting. So whenever possible, try to avoid meetings if needed. And then demos and retros are really important. We all know the value about demos and retros. They're around the business values. Video the demos, record them so that people who couldn't attend it can listen or watch it sometime later. It's also a really good learning mechanism and an educational tool. Electronic retros. There are tons of tools now that help you with electronic retros. They pretty much are digital twins of our physical retros that we've had. They're fantastic tools. There are many of those. Silent mapping is one thing that I would also recommend. Every now and then, what I have some of my Scrum Masters or some of my product managers do is, when in the retro, we share a whiteboard to the teams, and we ask them to just silently draw and express themselves on how that iteration went, express their frustrations, express their challenges. We historically have always been good at depicting things through pictures, through drawings, starting from cave paintings. And so that act of actually representing how you felt in an iteration is very therapeutic. And so, if possible, try to do that and try to, um, you know, have them draw and paint and share. So that's something that I found really powerful, especially in this remote execution world. The next one is collaboration. And a lot of us have started working on this in many ways. We've started to catch up, or we've started to introduce new things and new ways of working on this for for a 100% distributed workforce. So distributed teams, multiple geos is the most challenging things, of course. Multiple time zones is something that we want to factor in. So stand-ups are usually the most challenging, or regular meetings. In the past, the way it all used to work is you used to have a co-located team, and then if you had distributed teams, you would bring them in through a mechanism, be it video or be it some kind of a electronic mechanism. But now that everyone is remote, it's hard, right? You don't have that osmotic learning, you don't have that chatter, you don't have those drive-bys or hallway conversations anymore. So what a lot of teams have done now is that they have rotating time zone based stand-up. So each iteration sometimes is focused on one particular time zone. They adopt that time zone so that it is equally shifted across all of the various distributed teams. And this works really well because no one feels that only headquarters gets to say when meetings are held for a particular iteration. It could be on the East Coast, it could be Pacific, it could be Central. And that then democratizes the behavior of meetings. And that's worked out pretty powerfully. It also helps you empathize with other people because you're saying, okay, I know that last iteration you had to get up really early or you had to work really late. And this iteration, I am going to make that sacrifice myself, and I'm going to start feeling your pain, and we're all going to work collectively together. And that increases that oxytocin. The next one is tools. We want to make sure that we have real-time persistence and good tools with good UI and UX. We also want to make sure that they integrate well within your organization and there's a low barrier to adoption. It is not a good thing to have a tool that takes months or maybe a couple of help desk tickets in order to just get integrated or to start using. People don't have that level of patience anymore, and it becomes a very frustrating experience because you feel isolated, you feel cut off from the rest. There are conversations that are happening, and you do not have insight into that, or you're not part of it because you are unable to work with a particular tool. So make sure that the tool that you're using for remote collaboration integrates well, it has a good UI UX, it is quick to spin up, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to actually learn. Then we have pairing. We at VMware, we believe in pairing at all levels. So what this does, it gives us real-time collaboration. It increases the discipline. It makes us hold each other accountable for things. We also have better quality. There are tons of articles that talk about why quality improves with pairing. It also improves the morale. And then based upon the pairs, it also helps with the mentoring aspect of things, especially when you have a senior paired with a junior. And then it increases the cohesion, especially when you start rotating the pairs. You're sharing the knowledge and you are building those social dynamics, and it increases the overall trust and the empathy within the team. The next one is distributed data. We want to make sure that because people are completely distributed or they're still in some way, shape, or form in a remote environment, there is a single source of truth. And so there are some teams that maintain different workflows or different artifacts on different systems. Ideally, it's good to have a single source of truth because you want to have consistent observability. You want people to be able to make the same logical decisions and the inferences upon the single source of data that they have. It also signals common measures and data analytics. out of it. So this is really important, especially when you want to bring teams together. It also goes into the low barrier to adoption. If you have too many tools and it becomes a pain, people are going to crib, and you're going to hear about it in the retro. So having that single source of truth is really important. Next, let's go to remote communication. And this is really important right now in this world, because what we have observed is that the noise has increased so much. And it's not because it's so easy to send information right now, but it's because people really want to make sure that they stand above the rest, and the signal that they're broadcasting out is effectively reaching the other people. And so we have such a blast of information coming out, in addition to webinars, in addition to seminars, in addition to trainings that you have to do. We have emails that are blasted out to multiple people, just because people want to make sure that you are getting the right information. And we probably swung the pendulum a little more to the right. So what we want to do is we want to focus on three things in this communication. We want to focus on valuable meetings. And I know a lot of you, if you compare or take screenshots of your weekly calendars and share it, everyone is probably double booked or triple booked at certain slots of times, right? It's really hard to pick and choose which one you want to go to. But so in this remote environment, we want to make sure that our meetings are much more valuable. And then any information that we're putting out has that high signal to noise ratio. We want to reduce the amount of noise and increase the amount of signal. So you want to make it relevant and you want to make it important. And then finally, you want to have visual indicators. Words are good, but pictures are way better. And we understand things, be it through charts, be it through graphs, be it through infographics. It's much more easier for us to absorb. So let's dive into meetings. We talked about it a little bit, but I do want to share how we can identify which meeting is really important for us. Because if you're double and triple booked, you want to pick and choose. And you want to pick the one where you're going to get the maximum amount of returns. So there is a process that I use a lot. It was taught to me by my mentor, Lisa Atkins, where we start every meeting, or we preface every meeting with something what is called as a power start. So the first thing is we want to make very clear what is the purpose of the meeting. We have it in the title, we have it in the agenda, we make it very clear about what is needed. We then list out what are the outcomes or deliverables that people can expect out of this meeting. And this is really important, because if you're choosing between one or the other, you look at these outcomes and you look at these deliverables, and then you figure out if this is more important or not. And this is what goes into the agenda. We then try to highlight what's in it for them, why it is so important for them to attend the meeting. And this is really key. This is the value that you're signaling to the people. You want to engage the participants with excitement and passion. There are a number of status meetings where that I'm sure all of us have attended, where people don't have that passion, they don't have that excitement about the things that they won and they accomplished. And so for the others that are in the meeting, they don't really get that sense of accomplishment or that sense of pride, even if you're giving them accolades. And so you want to engage them with excitement and passion. And then finally, you want to make very clear the roles and responsibilities of the people. If needed, you want to reach out to some people up front and tell them that this is your expectation of them and what information they have to come to the meeting with. And that really helps prepare them and put them in the right frame of mind for these meetings. And so this is the power start. I've used it. It's really helpful. I hope it will demonstrate that same amount of value that I've seen in all my meetings. The next one is connectivity. So if you remember that dopamine and serotonin, that really doesn't get generated unless people actually know why they're doing the things that they're doing. So this is something I work with. A lot of the transformational leaders and the executives on is taking their strategic imperatives and connecting it all the way down to the projects and the work that people are doing so that they can look at what they are truly driving and how they're improving the organization by the hard work and the toil that they're undergoing. And so in some cases, the sacrifices that they are making. So having that connectivity and demonstrating and showing this is the reason why that particular project or initiative is so important, why it's going to drive drive the organization forward, why it'll move the needle, and also demonstrating what success means is really important in this remote world. So if you guys have not done it, I would highly recommend that you take all the projects that you currently have or a subset of them, whichever are transformational, tie them to the strategic initiatives that your organization has, and then demonstrate how you're improving and how you are adding value to the organization. And this could be your weekly update. You could flip it over, and instead of saying that I created so many widgets or we did X number of things, we are transferring it and saying this is the value that we added. And that's very powerful. Finally, visual indicators, we use this a lot. We use dashboards, tons of dashboards, and then we use newsletters. I'm not going into too much detail because we're all very familiar with these things at this point of time. But newsletters, I would say that always have a TLDR, too long didn't read, kind of a synopsis up front, so that people can quickly understand what you're trying to signal or what you're trying to share in that particular newsletter. Infographics is really important. Have graphs, have charts, really makes it pleasing and nice. Look at the form factor, try to make sure that it formats well and it doesn't suddenly have special characters that are popping up. So these are some things that you can focus on. And finally, let's look at enablement. Enablement goes in various ways. There are tons of things that you can do. But basically, the reason why you want to enable is you want to have that organizational shift throughout your digital or your business transformation. And Ron Westrom has three different categories or typographies of cultures. So the first culture, he calls it as pathological, which is very power oriented. An organization here will probably heads will roll if there are failures. Novelty is usually crushed. And so the goal, if you're in one of those things, is you want to move quickly into bureaucratic, which is rule oriented. You want to you want to make it much more of an interaction kind of an approach. There's going to be an overhead of rules, but once you achieve bureaucratic, you actually have a little more openness and transparency and discipline in how things will work. And then once you achieve this bureaucratic, or if you're currently in bureaucratic, what you want to move and aspire towards is you want to go into performance oriented. That is, you want to have more collaboration, you want to have shared risks, you want to celebrate failures and have learnings, and you want to have innovation that is going through. And this is kind of the nirvana state that people aspire towards. And on the concept of failure, one of the things that I encourage everyone to do is to embrace failure. Everyone is human. We all fail every day, and it's okay, right? We are comfortable with failing in our personal lives, but somehow when we put on the persona of a professional, we feel that failure is not an option, which is amusing. So what I encourage people to do is say, let's be real, let's be human. We're all going to fail. Let's learn from it. And one of the big tenets of DevOps is to fail fast, fail often, and fail cheap. And so we want to drive and have failure as quickly as possible and as cheap as possible. Learn from it, share that, and then cascade that within the organization. And that is usually done through team agility, right? You have commitment, you have courage, you have focus, you have openness, and you have respect. And these are the tenets, or these are the principles of team agility that are promoted within the organization. There is a hidden value that actually comes up as part of all of this, and that is trust. So if you truly are agile, or if you have team agility, you are driving that trust and you're driving that empathy. and you're driving that oxytocin and you're making people happier. And that is truly what you want to do in this post COVID-19 world. So, with that, I want to wrap up and say that there are four areas that we want to focus on: execution, collaboration, communication, and enablement in a remote work environment. But in order for all of these to actually work properly, you want to make sure that your core tenet and things and what you're truly focusing on is empathy. Empathy for your teams, empathy for your fellow human beings, and empathy for the community at large. So that you this is a key moment, a pivotal moment for humanity, and we are demonstrating and actually showing what being human means. We are frail, we are so scared about all these things, but still we're trying to help each other. We're trying to uplift people. We are truly being customer centric and focusing and sacrificing a lot to make sure that our customers are happier. And that is an amazing thing, and that's a positive thing. So with that, thank you very much for attending. I will be looking at the questions, and I don't know if we have time to go into some Q&A right now, but thank you for attending this, and I look forward to talking with all of you for the rest of the day or in the future.